Hey friends, I wanted to hop on here and record a video real quick talking about the differences that I feel like I've observed between those who learn from the medium of videos compared to those who learn from the medium of books. And as a little caveat to what I'm about to say, I want to say that there potentially is going to be a difference between those who predominantly think in pictures and those who predominantly think in words. That may be something that differs a little bit, like with what I'm about to say, but with the observations that I've made, these things to me seem to be the case as of right now. And I'll say this before I read out some of what I wrote, is the nature of what I'm going to be talking about has more to do with platforms like YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, where videos are pushed up and they're not necessarily organized in a structured way in terms of learning things deeply, okay? There are plenty of things that you can watch one video and learn because the depth of learning needed for that particular subject or skill is not deep. The type of learning that I'm talking about is more deep learning on any given subject or skill that requires the deep learning per se. So, I'm going to read a little bit of what I've wrote here and then comment on each of the sections. I have videos largely being a popularity contest and books being true uniqueness. So videos are surfaced from algorithms. You can't find the needles in the haystack, and even if you do, it takes much too long of a time to find all the needles. And even if you want to do that, you always want to go actually go deeper, because the videos are a highlight of learning. Whereas in books, you can read bibliographies, you can see what other thoughts influence this writer, you can trace thoughts, and you can inevitably go deeper. You can go to the sources and interact with the sources directly. So one of the first things I'll comment on is as a result of most videos being pushed up by algorithms, right? It's by what other people are currently liking. Now, some of that could be a sign of the usefulness of the video, right? Other times it can truly just be because the person is skilled at speaking, and so their videos are fun, or maybe the editing, they put it together. There's a lot of enjoyment coming from watching the videos. So sometimes popular videos can be helpful, but a lot of times there are probably so many videos out there that are needles in the haystack, meaning you can't find them because the algorithm hasn't pushed them up, and they are often much better for learning what you're trying to learn about compared to the popular ones, right? And so even if you do find these needles in the haystack, to put something together on a subject where then you have to find all the needles in the haystack is much, much harder, considering there are how many videos there are on the internet or even on each platform, to continuously find those needles in a haystack and then structure them together to coherently form a deep understanding of a subject or a skill. And again, this depends on the subject and skill that we're referring to here. This is the other thing that I wanted to comment on too, is that videos tend to be a highlight of learning, okay? It tends to be the case where most people you hear talking about a subject mention the fact that they can always go deeper, right? Even if they talk for 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, there's always more to be said, right? This is even the case with researchers whenever they give seminars. You know, this is years and years of work, or even months and months of work, and then they give a 1 or 2 hour talk. Of course there's more to talk about, right? There's videos, it seems that by their nature are highlights, are summaries of what's been learned, and so deep learning doesn't seem to be inherent within the video medium itself. It seems to be more of an approach to a highlight type of learning. So you can be familiar with things, but it doesn't seem to be a deep learning medium. Even if someone took time to structure multiple hours worth of content, it still does not seem like it's a deep learning medium itself. And this is, then I said, whereas in books you can read bibliographies, you can see what other thoughts influence the writer, you can trace thoughts, you can inevitably go deeper. You can go to the sources and interact with the sources directly. And I'm going to comment on something about books later and what I see as unique about them comparatively. But this is the nice part about the formality of books is that almost always there's a bibliography section where you can reference, you know, how or what other books influence this writer. So if you want to go deeper on something, you can, you know, pick all of them, or, you know, a couple of them, or something to trace the thoughts of where this author was getting the ideas. Whereas in a video, you have no idea. You know, there's no formality to the video. Again, even if there is formality, works may be referenced, which is definitely helpful. But very few times it is the complete works reference, because in a video form you don't tend to have as many quotes as you would maybe in a book form, so not everything needs to be referenced. And so maybe you have the major works, but even if in a book one thing was referenced from an author, it has to be cited. And so again, these are some of the things they show you. Okay, well, even if only one sentence is cited, okay, well, the author at least read a chapter of this book or this whole book, and it's good to know for my sake when considering what they wrote and how they wrote it. So here's the next part. Whereas video is a telephone game, and you can never see all the thoughts that went into making that video, even if people mention books. Okay, so yeah, that's exactly what I was mentioning. Yeah, I see video as much like a telephone game where someone heard something, or even someone read something, and then they repeat it, right? And as with a telephone game, things can get lost in translation, and even merely just going shallower with ideas could perhaps mistranslate the original idea itself. Sometimes the full thought needs to be articulated, and if it's not, that allows for a mistranslation. And then when the audience is hearing a summary of a work that's been done, that telephone game gets sloppy. And then just imagine this. Let's say you wanted to hear multiple perspectives on a subject, right? This is what a good person would, this is what a person trying to learn about a subject would do. Hey, I want to hear 5 different people talk about this to really understand different perspectives on this one subject. Well, let's say those 5 people are, you know, giving summaries. It's really hard to, you can get somewhat of an understanding, but you also don't know if, let's say 3 of those people who are giving summaries in their video form watched the first 2 people give their summaries, and they're either repeating, maybe they didn't read the direct sources themselves. This is, again, this is all in the context of deep learning and what each medium tends to lend itself to. The telephone game seems to be slippery, and I've noticed this with subjects that I'm wanting to learn too, is sometimes I can watch multiple hours of content on something over the course of a week or 2 weeks or a month, and then you're like, well, let me just get, you know, like the one book, and then you're like, oh, okay, I got it. And now all the people who were talking and mentioning the things on the subject, you're like, okay, they were including, you know, one argument from one chapter, and let alone there's 10 chapters. So that definitely does seem to be at play within the 2 mediums as well. So in the next part, I said, see, books are a sort of formality. They're structured in such a way that they make the idea most comprehensive. Videos are not such. They do not serve such formality. They are piecemeal, and they are chunked together. And so, let me also read this next part. Books by the effort that they take to make also contain the most bang for the buck. Videos by nature are a medium. The medium are incentivized to have you watch other videos, because once you start the telephone game, you don't stop. And so, yeah, this is kind of that thing that I've been seeing too within the nature of videos, is that most people, when they're making videos, they tend to be saying what other people are saying. And so I started to be like, okay, why? If these subjects are difficult, why are a lot of these things being talked about in such a simple manner that like everyone seems to be saying the same stuff? Like there's no new perspective. Like 10 people may be saying it, but there's no new perspective. And what you realize is that, okay, if we're all reading the same books, and this is part of the problem with recommended books too, and this is why, and this is separate from this topic, but this is one of the reasons why I would encourage people to force themselves to go outside of reference materials. Start, you know, on your own learning path, because you never know how the things that you're reading are going to connect to the things that you've already learned. So there's some nuance here with what I'm talking about. But Yeah, but by the nature of the video medium tending to lend itself to incentivizing watching other videos, especially because we watch videos on these platforms that are driven by ads. It's in the interest of creator, it's in the interest of the platform to not have everything contained in that one video and to have you watch other videos. This is what you'll see across a ton of channels is, oh, you know, I'll share like a couple things with you here, but even in this 5 steps video, I'm going to have this and this that are pretty much useless to this. This is going to be a form of ads. The content's going to be in the middle, but hey, if you want to learn more, then go watch this other thing. And again, that's not a, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that seems to just be an observation of the nature of videos, that it lends itself to needing to watch other videos because they don't go deep, even if it is 1 or 2 hours. There's almost never such a deep form of learning in that short period of time that, you know, you comprehensively understand something. And then I said, but books by the nature of the effort that they take to make, and by the fact that something's more permanent, I guess you could say. You could say videos are permanent by the fact that they, you know, could be uploaded and then repeated on the internet forever. But let's say you make a video and upload it and you get like nothing, you could delete it. Now I don't know all the tech stuff, like maybe it's always on there. I'm not techie like that, I don't know. But in videos, it's also a lot easier. Let's say you say something and it's on there forever. It's a lot easier to then make another video and then cancel out or reform maybe some of what you said, compared to whereas if you publish a book, you know, and if it's with a publisher, you may not get that second edition, or maybe they have the rights, so then you can't change it, but you're like, there's like a lot of things that I maybe disagree with. The nature of the book makes it as such that the author puts way more time and attention into the book than they do videos. Videos are much quicker. You can sound way more casual. We do not speak on video as we would speak in a book, and because that would sound very, very formal. By the quickness and by the succinctness of what a book is per argument, we're more inclined to give more, right? So I could give like 5 pieces of advice on camera and not feel weird if it only lasted 5 or 10 minutes, because I could be like, hey, that's worth like a lot. That advice is worth a lot. But if you write a book that's 10 pages, you know, perhaps the value can be off the charts, but people, by the nature of seeing a 10-page book, they'd be like, 10-page book, like that doesn't even seem like valuable at all, even though the words could be exactly the same. And this is what I'm saying, that books tend to go deeper because of how they're structured and because of the thought that people have when looking at a book, when scanning it, when evaluating it. So I see them as having more bang for their buck. And I'll just go back here to talk about the third point that I included with these last two. The fact that videos, they don't have that formality. They are chunked together with various ideas. And so, anyways, I'm going to kind of conclude this with saying, again, the caveat here to this whole thing may be that the person who thinks largely in pictures is going to say to me, Paul, you know, maybe no, not maybe, hey, I learn a lot better with videos and with watching people, especially when it's given in a structured format of like 10 video series, and each video hits on, let's say, a chapter of a book or an idea, and it's very thoroughly explained. And I'll say, okay, perhaps that is true. But my one thing with that, even if you think in pictures, is going to be, does the person who's speaking, are they even able to say everything that they're wanting to say on that subject in the video? Because let's say that you perfectly understand 100% of the 10 lecture series that I just mentioned. Like, let's say you understand 100% of it. That's great. But if you understand 100% of it, but the person who's speaking only spoke, even trying to be thorough, 50% of what they know, well, on that subject, because the other stuff, it just needs more time or another series or whatever. It seems that there's still not enough depth. Whereas when you get multiple people who are reading similar works and they're going to the primary source itself and not hearing someone speak on something as an afterthought, yeah, it just seems that those effects are the case. And may be wrong with this, but if you see the point of what I'm trying to say, and if you've noticed that within yourself, whenever you watch videos, compared to maybe you then go and read something, maybe that someone that you listened to suggested it, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna go pick up that book, and then you're like, wow, you really understood that. Because here's the last thing that I'll say in this, is that it tends to be after I've read a couple books on a subject, I always want to read more books on the subject, but insofar as then listening to like a lot of people on that subject, and this is not trying to belittle anything, but you then maybe will listen to a few of those videos and you're like, okay, like it seems surface level-y. It seems kind of shallow whenever you're hearing them talk. Occasionally, you'll get that 1 hour talk that you're like, wow, okay, that really clarified some things, especially if the book was harder. But yeah, these are just some observations that I feel like I've noticed within these two mediums. So if you relate with that, you can let me know down in the comments below. And if you really don't relate with that and you want to tell me why, I'd be very fascinated with hearing why. Because I do know that there's a lot of people who say reading is very hard for them, or that they don't learn best with reading, which again, that's why I put a caveat in there, because I completely get that, and I understand that is a case with some people. So I'll be curious to hear not only how you learn best, but what your mode of how you feel like you learn deeply, not just best, but learn deeply. And if you could make an argument for maybe why the mode that you learn in is actually deeper than through reading books. Because the one thing that I'm thinking of that could be, well, no, that I know for sure is deeper than learning books is just real life itself. But that to me is a different conversation, because that's not within the realm of a subject per se. You could write on the subject from your skill of life, but life inherently includes all all of experiences and all of subjects and all of skills, but it would just depend on your what you're doing like in the moment to be able to talk on those skills. Like you can learn more from sales, from doing sales, than you could from a book per se. So that's the only other mode, the being mode, the actually doing the thing, that is obviously the deepest type of learning. So yeah, I guess I'm more talking about learning from other people in the nature of the two mediums that we would say are most common. So anyways, let me know y'all's thoughts on that.